So my name is Sai. I'm going to be presenting today along with Vasu, if he's on, and Animesh. So can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep, you sound great.
Okay.
I think that there
So-
are some people actually in basic Java training too. So I'll just tell them to join this one.
Okay. So one thing that we'd like to do is we've been having problems with timing with a lot of questions. So what we'd like you guys to do is try and write your questions in chat, and then we'll go and answer them later. And then additionally, we'd also like you guys to check the link to Repel, which we've sent out. So we've sent out the link to the Repel. So if you're having errors with your code, try copy pasting the code from the Repel into your own Repel, and before you ask us for help. So just like a couple ground rules to try and make this process easier, so we don't have any problems. All right, so as we've discussed before, we're meeting twice a week. For anyone who's new, we meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we did have a poll that we sent out asking about the timing change, and it looks like an overwhelming majority of you guys wanted to move this class up to 5:30 as well. So we're going to be doing that, and from next week, the Tuesday class starts at 5:30. Okay, so now today we're going to be covering strings, Booleans, and if statements. So Vasu, are you here?
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to talk?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Should I share my screen?
Well, I mean, go through the presentation first.
All right. Yeah. So string. So last week another primitive data type that you guys are going to be that you guys are actually going to be using is strings and chars, and you can add strings and chars to your variable types. So a char is basically a character, and it is just one single letter, one single symbol, one single number. It's just one thing. So char, this is the type of it. It's type char. Its name, we want to put it inside of. So the first letter will be lowercase, and the second letter will be uppercase, and the second letter of the second letter of the second word. The first letter of the second word will be uppercase, and the first letter of the first word will be lowercase. Yeah, and so that follows camel case, and then anything inside of these single quotation marks, that is the value of the character. And so yeah, if we go into REPL, so if I just share my screen and we go into REPL, we can do something like char, and then we can name it my char, and then we can set equal to, and then we put in single quotation marks, and then we can put in anything that we want. We can set to A, we can set to lowercase a, we can set to uppercase y, lowercase y, you can set to 4, you can set to whatever you like. And as long as it's inside of these single parentheses, and it can only be one thing.
Single quotes.
Yeah, single quotation marks.
Yeah.
Sorry. But what's double parentheses? Well, a double parenthesis is a string. Huh?
Double quotes. You keep
double
saying
quote. Okay, I'm sorry. What's a double quote? A double quote would be a string, and you guys actually have used these before. if we go into system.out.println, on your first day, you guys learned how to make the hello world. You guys learned how to make the program hello world, and you guys use these double quotes, and these double quotes, anything inside those double quotes are a string. It's any sort of, and basically whatever you write in a string, the program will take it literally. You can write in anything there, and the program will display just that. So you could even write in like my char is equal to a, and it will still follow that. It will still display my char a. It won't actually initialize a variable. And so we can write something like, yeah, we can just write hello world. But here's another thing that but what if we want to display something other than a string inside of a system.out.println, but we also do want to display the string? Well, we can do something, we can just add in addition thing. And what that'll do is that will add on a different thing. So we can add on my char here. We can write my char, and we can just change this to your character is, and then it will display my char. So if you run the code, it will display hopefully if it actually loads. Well, it doesn't seem to be running, but what it would do, it would display your character is, and then it would display the letter A. You could change this to whatever you'd like. You could change that to a capital A, you could change it to a V, you could change it to an 8, and it'll display your character is, and then it'll display whatever is here.
Try refreshing your page.
Yeah, okay. All right, and so we can just delete that first of all. And then we can just click run. And hopefully it'll run. If for some reason it doesn't seem to be running. Well, anyway, it'll display whatever is set to my char. And that's basically all it is for strings. Character is just one single thing, one single symbol, and a string is a series of those symbols. It could be a sentence and whatever you'd like. So yeah.
So okay.
And it's displayed right there. And so yeah.
All right. So coming back to our slides, we are going to be.
Can you please go back to the code for just 1 second?
Yep, Vasu, can you hear your.
1 second. The code actually is visible, so I sent out a link a bit earlier. If you click that link that I sent, you can actually see the code that we write. And so that way we don't actually have to go back to that. So if you just click the link I just sent in chat, you'll be able to see that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but here is the code again. So you can, if you need to see this at any time, there's a link in chat, and then you, as Vasu said, you can click on that. So are there any more questions? So are there any more questions? Hello? Okay, so if there's no more questions, we're going to move on to our next type, which is a Boolean. So a Boolean is really simple. It's basically true or false. So a Boolean is kind of like a light switch. There's only two ways that it can be. It can only be on or off. So just like a light switch can only be on or off, a Boolean can only be true and false. It really is that simple. It's just true or false. And so this Booleans, though they're really simple, they form the basis for all of computer logic. So we're gonna talk about how Booleans work. So over here, we're back at our REPL, where Vasu explained what a character is and what a string is. So again, one thing that you should keep in mind is a string is just like any other type. So you don't have to, it doesn't have to be inside a system.out.println. You can also just type it out directly. So you can just say string my name, and camel case, is equal to psi, right? And you can type whatever your own name is, right? So now I can take this string and print it out as normal. So system.out.println my name. So it's going to print this out normally, just like any other string. It's just going to print out my name and whatever we have before. So the next type that we're going to do is we're going to cover Booleans. So Booleans, once again, they're really simple. They're the basis for logic. All they are is just true or false. And so Booleans being true and false are sort of like a light switch. So if you need like a good analogy, a light switch is like your best analogy. So you can say Boolean, and we can say, is it summer? And the answer is true. And then Boolean, is it winter? And the answer is false. So Booleans are really simple. All they are is true and false. There's only two possible values that a Boolean can have, and they form the basis for all of computer logic. So Booleans, you can work with them just like any other primitive type. So you can print out a Boolean. So system out.println is it summer plus is it summer, right? So I can type this and it's going to print out, is it summer, true. So it acts like any other primitive type. And so what this plus symbol is doing, and you saw it over here as well, but all it's doing is it's just adding on to the end of the string. It's called concatenation. And that's just adding to the end of the string. So it's like you have a string and then it just adds on to the end. It's sort of like if you have a train, you're just adding a couple more coaches to the end of the train. And then it functions as one. So if I print this, is it summer, true, I'll print that out. So Booleans are really simple. That's all there really is to it, is just saying, is it true or false? Well, sort of like a light switch. So does anyone have any questions?
Can you show your code real quick?
Okay. And once again, if you need to look at the code, you can look at the repel link in the chat. So are there any more questions? Or does everyone understand what a character and a string and a Boolean is? So I see Apar is raising his hand. Apar, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering why string isn't blue like character and Boolean.
Okay, so you found out something that's a good observation. So string is actually technically is not a primitive data type, but we'll get into that. For now, just pretend it's the same. So
Okay,
string
I was
is
just wondering.
technically not a primitive, but for now we'll just pretend it is, right? We'll get into that in a week. Right. So good observation that it isn't blue because it's an object, not a primitive. So we'll get into that later. So that's a really good question, actually. So does anyone else have any other questions? So if there's no questions, we'll be moving on to our next segment. So Animesh, are you on?
Yeah, I am here.
All right. So would you like to?
Yeah. So our next topic we're going to be covering is if statements. If statements will build upon Booleans because if statements are able to use Booleans in order to execute code under certain conditions. So on the right, you can see how an if statement would run in a program. So you would click run, and it would go to condition 1. Now, condition 1 can either be true or false, so a Boolean. If it is true, it'll run statement 1 and then exit. If it is false, it'll go to condition 2, check if it's true or false. If it's true, it'll run statement 2 and exit. If it's false, it will go to condition 3, and so on and so forth, and it can go for as long as you make it. But then if none of the conditions are true, the if statement will go to the else body, run whatever code is in there, and then exit. So next slide.
Okay.
So that's how it would run. And then on the right, you can see the actual how an if statement will actually look. So you always begin an if statement with if, and then parentheses, and then the squiggly brackets. In the parentheses goes your condition, meaning what you're checking if it's true or if it's false. If it's true, it will run whatever code is in the body of the if, or whatever's in the squiggly brackets. If it's false, it'll go to an else if, which will check another condition, and depending on that, it will either run the code or it will finally go to the else body, which will run if none of the conditions are true. And then an if statement always has the same order. It's always if, and then if you need it, else ifs, and then at the very end is else. So now I can show you a example in REPL of using if statements. So can I share my screen?
Yeah, you can share your screen.
All right. Are you able to see it?
Yep, we can see it.
All right. So I'll do if state. So the example I'm going to be showing you to show you how if statements will work is a traffic light situation. Because depending on the light, you make decisions whether you need to go forward, stop, or slow down. So first we're going to make two variables. Is Boolean is green. And then set that to true for now. And then Boolean is red and set that to false. Now with those two variables, we can make our if statement. So we can say if is green. So we could say if is green equals true, but that would be sort of repetitive. Well, you would put 2 equals, but that's sort of repetitive. Instead, you can just say is green, because if it's true, it will run anyways. You don't have to be you don't have to be like if it equals true. And then in this we can put system.out.print and then go, because it's green. Next, we can put an else if, because we want to also check if it's red. So else if is red, and system dot out dot print stop. Now you might be wondering why I didn't include yellow. Well, the reason for that is if we're checking 3 things, we only technically have to check 2, because if it's neither of the first 2 conditions, then it will automatically be the last one. So we can just put that in the else block. So else, we don't have to put parentheses since it's not checking a condition. Else system slow down. That's a basic if statement. So right now, is green is true and is red is false. If we are to run this, because what?
You're missing the T. Yeah.
Oh,
And
my
turn on.
bad.
Yeah.
So if we try and run that again. Did I spell something else wrong?
Yeah, you're.
Print line is
spelled
spelled
somewhere
wrong.
Okay.
Okay, so at the very bottom, you see it says go because green is true. And then, but what happens if we keep is green true, but also set is red to true? So if we run that, it still says go. And it's supposed to do that. That's because the if statement will go in order of how you write it. So the second it sees something is true, it will execute the code in here, and then it'll immediately exit. It won't check anything else. So you want to be aware of that in case you have multiple variables. And then if we set both of these to false, it should print slow down. Yeah. However, so we could put more else if statements, but that's not all we can do. We can also put if statements inside of if statements. or else if statements, or else blocks. So, for example, if you're driving, you know that if you need to turn right at some intersections and it's red, you can turn right on red sometimes. So we can add another Boolean. Plus turn and set that to true. And then we can put if turn However, if we don't need to turn, we will need to stop. So we can just say else, and then put the stop in the bracket. So if we run this, it'll still say slow down. That's because it will only run if the else if block is red is true, because it will only execute this code if it's true. So we need to set this to true. And now it says turn. So this is how you can use if, else if, and else statements. You can have as many else if statements as you want. You can put as many if statements inside of a if statement as you want. So it's just an easy way to check for certain conditions, and if that condition is true or happening, it will run that code. So.
All right. So are there any questions for Animesh?
The
is that
for the like that link that you sent us, it doesn't have the code that we just did.
The one in the chat?
So what you have to do is you have to reload that page, and then I'll update it with the newest code.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. So does anyone else have any questions? So, yeah. So basically, so far we've learned about Booleans and then if statements, which depend on Booleans, right? So depending if the Boolean is true, it'll evaluate the block of code. And then what Animesh was trying to get at with nesting if statements is that this is just another piece of code, right? Whatever inside the parentheses, inside the squiggly brackets, there's nothing special about it. It's just that that part of the code only exists depending on a certain condition. So you can put whatever you want inside the squiggly brackets. So I can create more variables. I can say int year is equal to 2020, right? I can do whatever I want. I can type.
Hey, Sai, why don't you do some compares without Boolean? You know, compare to int or.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, just one thing to keep in mind is that this is just a normal block of code. The only thing that's special is that if the condition isn't evaluated is false, then you're going to then it pretends that this block of code doesn't exist. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to try and do comparisons. So comparison operators. Because it's not really that useful if all you can do is preset things to true and false. You want to be able to compare things. So some of the most common types of comparisons are comparing numbers. And so this is just like you learned in math class. So you have the same basic operations. So you have greater than, less than, and then you also have greater than and equals to. But in math, you may remember it being the caret with the line underneath it. Here, what we do is a caret and an equal sign. And then the same thing with less than. Is going to be less than equal to, right? So this is these work exactly how it is in math class, right? So if one number is bigger than another and you have a greater than in between, then you're going to get true. If it's bigger, if the number on the left is bigger than the number on the right, and you have a less than, then you're going to get false. So all these comparison operators do is they generate a Boolean. So I guess that's an important thing to note. Comparison operators generate a Boolean. So in addition to greater than, less than, and greater than or equal to, we also have equals to. So the way equals to works is it's actually two equal signs, right? Because in code, in Java, when we have one equal sign, we're assigning a value. So because the single equal sign is already taken up, it has to be two equal signs to compare. So equals to, and then there's also not equals to. And so again, this is really simple. If the two numbers are the same, or really anything is the same, then this returns true. If they're the same and you have a not equals, then it's going to return false, right? So you can use this the same way you'd use a Boolean. Right, so if I have is 10 a bigger number, and I'm going to make this a Boolean. And if I say equals, and so now instead of typing true or false, all I need to do is I can type out an expression using these comparison operators. So is 10 a bigger number? And I can say 10 is greater than 20. And 20 is bigger than 10, so this is going to return false, right? And then, so I guess than 20, right? And then here's another scenario. Boolean is 10 a smaller and we get 10 less than 20, right? So if I print this out, this is going to return true. Sorry, this is going to return false. And then this is going to return true, right? So you can use these in the exact same way as a Boolean, right? And the cool thing about this is that you can generate this on the fly, right? So you don't need to assign it to a variable and then use it. You can just generate it and use it directly. So the key place it's used is it's mainly used in if statements. So let's say you're in a supermarket and they have an express lane, right? So the limit for the express lane, int express limit, is usually 15 items, right? So I can also have another number and I can say int items in my cart. And let's say I have 20 things in my cart. So I want to know, or at least my program wants to know, whether or not I have more items in my cart than the limit. So what I can say is if items in my cart less than equal to express lane limit, they can say system.out.println use the express lane. Else system go to the normal checkout. Right, so if I run this, it's going to tell me to go to the normal checkout because 20 is not less than or equal to 15. Right? There is, it runs. And it should be running. Yeah, so I guess while this tries to run, if I change this and I say items in my cart is 5, so I bought 5 things at the grocery store, then it's going to say go use the express lane. So the key thing to note is I'm doing the comparison directly inside the if statement. I'm not making another Boolean variable, right? So you can generate Booleans on the fly. So all this does is it compares two numbers, and because there's an operator between them, the numbers are compared, and then it returns a Boolean. And so you can do this in any number of scenarios. So let's say I want to know. Let's say I want to know if I have weight in my suitcase, right? Say you're going on a trip. Right? And so if you're going on a trip and your airline gives you a certain limit on how heavy your bags can be, right? So I can say int baggage weight limit is usually around 50 pounds. Let's say it's 50 pounds. And then int my bag weight is, let's say I have 40 pounds in my bag, right? And then another thing that you can do is you can pay the overweight fee, right? So maybe they charge you $5 per extra pound. So double fee over weight fee. Let's call this, I don't know, $5.25 per pound, right? So now we can calculate how much, whether or not I have to pay anything, and if I have to pay, how much do I need to pay, right? So I can say if baggage, my bag weight, less than equal to baggage weight limit, then I can say system.out.println you are good. Else I'm too heavy. So now I want to figure out how much my overweight fee is going to be, right? So let's say int amount. What's going on? Okay. Overweight is going to my bag weight minus the baggage weight limit. Right, so it's just subtracting the difference between, it's subtracting the weight limit from your bag weight, and it's finding the amount overweight, right? So now I can do the math, and I can say double over total fee is going to be amount over weight times over weight fee, right? And I can print it out, and I can say you will have to pay $, and then I'm going to concatenate the total fee. So all it's doing is it's just adding the total fee onto the end of the string. Right, so if I run this now, and if Repel decides to run, which it doesn't seem like it's running.
Well, it's very slow today, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, right now it's going to tell me my bag weight is 40, so you're good. It's going to tell me you are good. If I set it to 60 pounds, then it's going to subtract and say you're 10 pounds overweight. So 10 times 5.25, you're going to pay $52.50. So it looks like Repel is trying to load. But yeah, so you can use any number of comparisons that you want. So comparisons work just like the same way they work in math class, right? You have greater than, less than, greater than equal to, less than equal to, equals to, not equals to, right? So all these comparisons you can use to compare two numbers or doubles. So are there any questions on how comparisons work? There are no questions?
Everybody has fallen asleep.
Okay.
Not all of us.
So it looks like people
Excuse
are.
me?
Yep,
Excuse
go ahead.
me? Can you
Go
go down in the code? Can you go down?
Yeah. And you can also click on the link to the Repel in the chat.
Sai, you should
Open,
show
just
them
refresh the page and you'll be able to see everything.
the math in the if statement.
Not in the if statement? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So another thing you can do is you can combine any number of expressions you want into one statement, right? So if let's say I'm a teacher, right? So new scenario, teacher. And let's say I want to give stickers to kids who got over 90%.
I thought you had not even happened.
All right. So let's say I want to know int my grade is going to be, let's say I got a 95. And int threshold is going to be a 90. And so since I am going to, so now we're going to compare two numbers and say if threshold, so okay, so just to make us use some math, we're going to say if okay, let's say the max score, int max score. So let's say the max score is a 120, right? So what we want to do is we want to find out what percent I got and see if that's greater than the threshold, right? So that's a better scenario. So if, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say my grade, and I'm going to cast this to a double. So that way I get a decimal. So if my grade divided by max score, right, is greater than or equal to 90, then I can say system out.println, you get a sticker, else system.out.println, better luck next time. Right, so here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this in parentheses so that way it knows for sure that it has to do the math before it does the comparison, right? So again, this follows the standard order of operations of PEMDAS. You might have heard, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, right? So it's going to do whatever's in a parentheses first, right? So it's going to do the math, then it's going to say, is it greater than or equal to 90? And if repel loads at some point, which it's being really slow, ran into an internal error. Let's try this again. And it's still trying to load.
Boy, the guys at Repel must be having a bad day.
So
Either that or it might be overloaded.
might be having some form of an outage. But anyway, you guys get the idea, right? So is there any questions?
You're going to give them the sample code, right? So
Yeah, we'll. So again, we'll send the code out at the end, and you all guys already have the link to the Repel that you can check. So, okay, so we have a question from Pranav. He says, why did you use double in double my grade divided by max score greater than or equal to 90? Right, so what the double is it's going to convert my grade. It's going to cast my grade into a double. That way, when you do a division, it gives you a decimal instead of just rounding down, which is a number, right? So that helps make it more accurate.
it's because your amount had a fraction in it to start, right?
Yeah.
So you can tell if it's whole numbers, then you can use integer. But if you're going to put a fraction in it, then you better make sure that all of the variables that are in that compare are also capable of holding a fraction. Otherwise, it's going to truncate it.
Yeah. Also, I just noticed the mistake, but we should have, it should be 0.9, not 90. 0.90. So, again, let me try and correct that quickly, but whenever Repel decides to load, we'll correct that. But what we have for you guys is we have a project for you guys to try out before your next class on Thursday. So what we'd like you guys to do is we'd like you guys to build a sales tax calculator, right? So in Michigan, our sales tax is 6%. In Ohio, the sales tax is 5.75%, right? So we'd like to have you store the name, the price, and the state. And we'd like to have you guys figure out how to make it print out what is the tax and what's my total cost going to be. Right, so this is sort of combining everything that we've learned so far. You're going to be using integers, doubles, Booleans. You're going to be doing operators, and you're going to be doing if statements, right? And then if you would like to get some extra credit, if you will, also try and consider whether or not an item is groceries. So that would be another variable. Is it groceries? And if it is groceries or really food, then you don't have sales tax on food, right? So if you'd like the extra credit, try and see if you can make an exemption for food. And so we're going to discuss the answer to this next class.
Does everybody understand what the homework assignment is? Because now's your time to ask questions. Make sure you understand it. They're sleeping.
Can we play him a lullaby or something?
Okay.
Okay, so no questions?
We can
How do
probably
we submit it?
Can you repeat that?
How do we submit the project?
You don't. We'll just write your code in Repel,
Project. What you'll be
and then
what we'll be doing is we're
go
gonna
over it next class. You can look it over yourself and see how close you were.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really want us to know you did it, you can email the link to your Repel to us. But yeah, so it's all really, this is just for you personally to know whether or not you're getting it. So this shouldn't take you too long. It's relatively simple, but it will go over pretty much everything that we've done so far. So are there any more questions?
I have a question.
All right, go ahead.
Is there what's the given price, or do we just make one up, or will you like give us the price?
Yeah, you just make it up. So you just create your own variables and make it up. So I mean, you could make up your own product, or you can go look up an item, right? Go to Walmart's website and find an item. It's up to you. You can set it whatever you want. And I'd encourage you to keep changing it and try different combinations of conditions in order to see if it can handle everything.
Okay, thanks.
Sai, where did you buy this thing? The standard tax is 6.35%.
Somewhere other than Michigan.
Yeah. Okay.
So are there any more questions? Let's call for questions.
Is everybody okay with the class? Things are going along okay? You're understanding what we're doing?
Are
Everybody
you moving
happy?
too fast or too slow?
I think it's good.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So I guess this is the end of our class then. We will see you guys on Thursday.
Thank you.